Hello and welcome to my video on the digital distribution grid and how digitalization and communication can help energy distribution grids to make the growth in e-mobility work. My name is Günter Böhm. I'm Senior Key Expert on Communication Technologies and Product Manager at Siemens, Digital Grid Business Unit in Munich. The e-mobility is growing. We're seeing more and more models from more manufacturers, more charging points both privately and publicly, and in the end more e-cars in the streets. But how does this quantify? To find out, we teamed up with the distribution grid operator of one of Germany's largest metropolitan areas, with Stromnetz Hamburg. The figures shown here revealed that from 2017 to 2018, Hamburg has seen a tremendous growth in e-vehicles by 51%. By the time of the study, the forecasted total number of e-cars and hybrids in 2024 summed up to 50,000. 45% of which were projected to be charged at home, which would already constitute a heavy burden for the distribution grid. Now, may I remind you that these figures stem from before the COVID-19 pandemic and before the broad series of aggressive fiscal stimulus and relief programs that have been announced recently by the governments of e.g. France and Germany. Some of these measures explicitly provide stimulus for e-vehicles and EV charging stations, so the figures here are very likely to be surpassed. But well, what to do now in order to keep the grids stable and reliable in the light of this wave of e-vehicles? To cope with this challenge, Stromnetz Hamburg, Siemens and EBG Compleo, a manufacturer of EV charging points, set up a pilot project called Köpfchen statt Kabel. That is, smart intelligence instead of simply burying more copper cables. The project goal is to prevent grid overload that could be caused by more and more charging stations being installed and run. However, costly expansion of the grid and all the associated civil works shall be avoided. So, let's have a look at the pilot project scope. In the illustration here, you see numbered with 1 the transformer station. So that is the entity being connected to the medium voltage network. It transforms the voltage level down to the low voltage and connects the endpoints, the houses. We see in the illustration here with number 3 the charging points, the e-cars, and complementary also battery storage, especially in the case that the consumers do not only consume energy but are also producers, for example by means of photovoltaic plants. How can this existing traditional distribution grid become smart and intelligent? In the pilot project, we use a communication gateway, and it is a communication gateway that provides an interface for power line communication. This product is currently used in a number of European countries for the purpose of smart metering. It collects the meter reads via the power line and forwards the data to the central meter data management. This product is not used in Germany for smart metering due to the particular regulations in Germany. But we do not communicate with smart meters here anyway, but we communicate by means of off-the-shelf power line modems. The gateway goes into the transformer station and the modems are placed in the individual homes and close to the EV charging points. By this means, we establish connectivity between the transformer station and the charging points. So we establish a data transmission channel with power line communication over the existing low voltage power grid. So no additional communication cables or other communication means like radio systems whatsoever. In addition to the connectivity, the gateway constantly monitors the power grid by means of locally connected power quality instruments. So they measure voltage and current level, and by this means get an image of the situation in this part of the distribution grid. The data can be locally processed at the gateway, and as a result, the gateway signals kind of traffic lights towards the charging stations. If energy supply is fine and the grid stability as a consequence is good, the charging points receive a kind of a green light, which means charging without limits, or at least no limits from the side of the distribution grid. If too many consumers, too many e-vehicles, but also other consumers in that part of the low voltage grid consume energy, the supply situation may get tense and the grid stability poor. In this case, the system can signal a yellow light. That means charging can be limited. For example, charging limited only up to 50% of the charging station's capacity. And only in the rare case of the situation getting really bad, the system can drop charging stations from being in charging operation. Obviously, this case has to be avoided, and the data gathered by the system should also help to improve the overall grid situation, that this case should not be frequently the case. A final word on the pilot project setup with regards to the gateway's uplink. The gateway has an integrated cellular modem and can communicate via means of mobile radio systems, and can therefore connect to cloud or other central SCADA systems. However, the function of local monitoring and local control works autonomously and securely even without this uplink into central systems. So the use case described here is a truly decentralized application, no bottlenecks with regard to central systems. All right, this closes the technical insights into the pilot project setup. The pilot is still ongoing and the next steps are further tests. After a setup at an innovation campus, the concept will also be rolled out into real city quarters and districts in Hamburg to obtain actual and real life feedback. And by this means, validate and possibly refine the concepts and algorithms. Finally, potential adaptations of operational processes and rollout preparations will conclude the project. All of these efforts have one ultimate goal. The low voltage grid should be maintained as stable and reliable for all consumers and applications as it is today, while at the same time the expected multitude of EV charging points is to be integrated in addition. Now, do you have questions? While on the spot of today's Tech Days 2020, we could meet in the matchmaking room area, so please check this option in the event setup. Otherwise, you find here also my email address for getting in contact the classical way. Also flagged out is the pilot project's webpage. Thank you for attending. Take care and bye-bye.
Hi there, this is Lex Hartman, CEO of Ubitricity. Thanks for listening to me. In 10 minutes, I'll explain something about the system and especially why driving an electrical vehicle can be for free. So listen carefully. Why are we at a tipping point for electrical drive? And actually, there are 5 reasons. There were 4, but now 5. The first reason is pure economics. We are getting into a phase that the total cost of ownership for an electrical vehicle will be lower than petrol or diesel. And that means that not only the early adopters, but also normal people, so to say, will buy an electrical car. The second reason is that actually the product is getting mature. Until now, to say you could only buy a Tesla in red, white, or blue, but now all companies are coming out with a car and with different models and different options, so it's actually a mature product. The third reason is politics. You see politics all over the world, but especially in Europe, that is stumble over each other to take the measures to get into the green future, so to say. It's London introducing a high amount for each day that if you drive a diesel. It's Norway that is promoting with tax reasons to buy an electrical car. And it's Amsterdam, for example, that says as of 2030, you're not allowed to drive a petrol or diesel car into the city. No one, not even existing ones. And you will see that these politicians stumble over each other. The fourth reason is us. We think differently about mobility and about the future, especially the young kids. And if I tell you that I'm living in Berlin and I have friends who drive Porsches, and these guys that drive a Porsche, more and more they are a bit ashamed for their car, because if their daughters and sons come at home, they actually park the car somewhere else because they don't want them to see that their friends see that their dad has a Porsche. And that is changing. And on top of that, we've got COVID. And it might sound strange, but for our industry, this will be an enormous effect, because all the so-called Marshall Health Plans that will evolve in the coming weeks and months will address the Green Deal in Europe, infrastructure, digitalization, and that is all electrical driving. So we're looking at a bright future, so to say. What is the problem? So now that we know that we're at a tipping point, that we will have millions of cars into the future. And what do they mean for the system? Is it a burden or is it a blessing that electrical cars will be there? And I think it will be a blessing if we manage it right. So what is the challenge? If there are millions of cars, they're going to be charged, and they need to be charged at the right moment. Not at the moment where you come at home and there's no sun and no wind. No, they need to be charged in the middle of the day or in the middle of the night, roughly speaking. Second issue is we will have a lot of renewables, because electric cars need renewable energy. Now, roughly you can say that in a country it will be around 250% of peak demand will be produced now and then by renewables. So we will have much too much energy, and now and then when there's no sun and no wind, we have not enough energy. So we need something to store our energy. And that can be water, that can be hydrogen, but it certainly will be the batteries of electrical vehicles. Actually, for the system, electrical cars are batteries with accidentally 4 wheels. So how are we going to use them? Well, first of all, what we need to do is that we steer the charging. Not fast charging at the wrong moment, which is, by the way, very consumer unfriendly, because who wants to wait in a queue? And they are bad for the batteries and costly. No, we want that when people do other things, that then they charge, and exactly at the moment when the sun shines or the wind blows. And that's in the middle of the day when people are at work, or middle of the night when they are at home. And that brings us to the conclusion that actually an electrical car that is driving around doesn't bring the system anything. It needs to be connected to the grid when it doesn't drive. So you need sockets everywhere. And how much sockets do you need? Well, more than cars, because cars drive around. So that actually means that, roughly speaking, you could say on every car in the future, we will need 1.5 sockets. And that's much, much more than we assume at this very moment. Well, is this an issue on the countryside? Most of the time not. because people on the countryside have their own driveway. So there's no need for public charging there. But if you live in a city, in an apartment, in a building, in London, Amsterdam, Paris, or in Berlin, and you don't have your own driving way, then actually you need sockets on the street. So public charging will be something which is extremely important, because you need to be able to charge at every moment. Well, roughly speaking, you could say that in a city like these big cities like London and also smaller ones like Oslo, that 60% of the charging will be public charging. And that's including supermarkets and parking garages, but 60%. So just imagine a city like Berlin in 25 with only 10% electrical cars. There are 1.2 million cars in Berlin, so that means 120,000 electrical cars, and they need 180,000 sockets, and of that, 60% public, which is 100,000. So we're looking at an interesting future. Ubitricity, here comes the advertisement, of course, can help there, and actually in two ways. First of all, we've got our product where we change a lamppost into a charging unit. We do that within an hour. In London, have a look at our website, we're already market leader, and more than 2,000 of lampposts are changed into, or even transformed, you could say, into a lamppost. And that is normal way of charging. We even have an electrical street in London, in Paddington, and this is the future where you can, let's say, charge everywhere. That's why it's called Ubitricity. The second part is mobile metering. And now here comes an interesting part about why you can drive for free. Actually, it means that the flexibility of the battery into the future will be worth a lot of money. We're talking about thousands and thousands of euros you can earn with a car. Over the lifetime of a car of 7 years, it will be more than 10,000 euros. If you have a mobile meter on board or in the cable, then actually what happens is that first of all, the car can bring its own contract and is not dependent on the stationary charger. That's interesting for companies to attach an electricity contract to all the cars, the whole fleet, or it is interesting for OEMs who actually can sell a car including the energy. But secondly, if you have the mobile meter on board, the value of the flexibility stays within the car. With the mobile meter, you can sell it to the system, and it doesn't stay with the stationary meter. So here are these reasons why Ubitricity is technical innovation. On the one hand, on the lamppost, which is a charming, simple idea, and on the other hand, you actually see that the mobile metering enables the car to get into the economy of delivering energy and to make money out of the flexibility of the car. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is why we have such a bright future. Again, we are at the tipping point. We will have a lot of renewable energy, and we will have systems in place that actually, at the end of the day, the electrical car is not a burden, but a blessing for the whole system. Thanks for your attention.
Hello everybody, welcome to Tech Days 2020. My name is Michael Renninger. I'm from Green City Power, Managing Director. And today I will tell you something about Power to People, our solution for connecting PV production and demand in a post-feed-in tariff environment. So let's start right away. First of all, I would like to introduce Green City, then put attention on the post-feed-in tariff environment, tell you something about Green City Power to People, and then speak about our solution and engagement. Yeah, who is Green City? First of all, Green City e.V. is a Munich-based NGO, being active since 30 years now for less mobility and more green in cities worldwide. 1,800 members and 26 employees are working on the transition towards less traffic with cars, more public transport, more bike lanes, and various activities to bring more green into the cities. And Green City NGO is a major shareholder of Green City AG, a company with 140 employees based in Munich and Toulouse, first and foremost developing renewable energy projects, but also doing several other activities all around energy and mobility transition. Some figures. Green City AG has invested so far more than €500 million in renewable energy projects. Almost 8,000 people invested more than €225 million in those projects. The overall energy output in the year 2019 had been 239 gigawatt hours, and the installed capacity is around 250 megawatt in solar, wind and hydro power plants based in 4 countries: Germany, Italy, France and Spain. These are the devices of Green City. First and foremost, the renewables section, developing projects, constructing them and operating those. My company, Green City Power, delivering energy as well to private households, but also to corporate customers. Green City Finance, raising money in order to invest mobility and renewable energy projects. Green City Drive, putting new mobility into the cities, for example, EMI sharing here in Munich. And Green City Experience, consulting municipalities regarding new topics, and also creating events like the Street Life Festival with more than 200,000 visitors over a weekend. PV in the post-feed-in tariff environment. First, some figures. The German feed-in tariff system lasts 20 years for every plant taken into operation, and that means that by the beginning of next year, more and more plants will go out of this feed-in tariff system. Here you can see the PV capacity running out this tariff system. Only a few plants in the first years, but then accelerating. And in numbers of capacity, you can see the blue column, the overall capacity is dominated by wind. But on the right-hand side, you see a very interesting figure. More than 500,000 PV systems will be affected within the next 10 years, going out of the feed-in tariff system and then searching for new methods to operate those plants. So during the feed-in tariff period, it's relatively easy. The power plants get revenues, fixed revenues and state guaranteed to cover their operational costs. And the grid operator is obliged to take off the energy which is produced. But after 20 years, those revenues are not secured, but the operational costs, of course, are still there. The grid operator has no more obligation to take off the energy, and additional hurdles are in place because technical modifications are necessary to then fulfill the obligation to feed into the grid. So Green City developed a solution for PV operators. We created a landing page and running a countdown, because on the 1st of January 2021, the new period, the post-EEG era, will start. And we have a showcase, a PV system built in the late 90s and now based on our rooftop, on the rooftop of the Green City office here in Munich, which will be affected as one of the first PV systems. And interested operators of PV systems can leave a message, and we will contact them and offer them a so-called PPA, power purchase agreement. For example, instead of getting 0 remuneration, we will pay them in the range of 5 cents per kilowatt hour, which those systems produce. But this is not the only thing. We also cared about where this energy should go to. And therefore we created a new tariff, an electricity tariff, which every household and every corporate customer in Germany can switch to. These are the conditions. Also for that, we created a landing page, Green City Power to People. And the special thing here is that 20% of this Power to People tariff will consist of solar energy, mostly produced by those post-feed-in tariff PV systems. Of course, not 100%, because during the night the sun doesn't shine. Therefore, we need other energy sources like wind and hydro also. But these 20% we are very much front runners in Germany. So on the one hand, we created this solution, take off the energy from PV systems after the tariff, the feed-in tariff period. And we created an off-taker base, and everybody can support those operators. But this is not the only thing we did, because we are also working on the political side and submitted a statement and proposal to the German Ministry of Economy and Energy. How can the operation of post-feed-in tariff photovoltaic or prosumer plants be successful in the future? And we also supported the petition No Off for Solar Systems after 20 years, backed by Solarenergieförderverein Deutschland. Therefore, switch, engage, enjoy. You can have a look and decide whether you can participate in this Green City Power to People tariff, or you might engage on Green City NGO, or you simply enjoy a ride with our joint venture with Emmy Sharing, an e-scooter company here in Munich. Thank you from my side, and enjoy the tech days, and I say bye-bye.
Hi everyone, well, great to be here today. Thanks a lot, Tech Days, for the invitation. I'm very happy to be able to present today a bit on battery analytics, or rather predictive battery analytics. I think that's the key part. My name is Leonard Hinrichs, and I'm a commercial director at Twice. Well, just a brief introduction into the company. I hope you'll allow that. Twice is a spin-off from Technical University of Munich. That was like around 5 years of research that went into it, and development, obviously, at the Technical University of Munich, right around the corner here. And we have now grown this company to over 50 people, and quite a lot of them, obviously, the battery space, but also the software and AI space. I think the three areas we want to combine, and I'll come to it later, why I believe this is both very important and very good benefit of our solution as well. We were very fortunate with our recent funding round. We closed our Series A early March, right before the Corona lockdown. Very, very lucky timing indeed. But that really provides us with the opportunity to grow even quicker, to even use this time to continue on developing our solution. We've obviously won a couple of prizes. I'm not sure this is entirely relevant, but the European Commission, the German government, and the likes have provided us with the laureates. And what was that for? Well, let's dive into that straight away. And I think let's start on a very positive note. 2014, I think a year we all remember, at least if we are into football, Germany won the World Cup. So very positive feeling indeed, but also on another playing field, shall we say. The first clouds at the horizon arrived in October 2014, a white paper here, where we saw the first signs of Dieselgate, which then really kicked off the following years. And why is that important? Why is that relevant to battery analytics? Well, we just published our own white paper with Altavista, Schwacke, and TÜV Rheinland, where we take a look at the kind of residual value situation with batteries. And we were talking in there in the introduction, and I quite like that, about the second wave of battery electric vehicles. Because the first wave, well, starting in the 2000s, there were first efforts of really bringing electric vehicles to the market, but it kind of faded away. And only this real disruption showing that all technologies will ultimately not be able to provide, especially locally emission-free mobility, but also will not be able to really provide a good solution in the long run either. This really led to the push, and I think we're here really at an inflection point where we see a rapid increase in the demand for lithium-ion batteries as kind of a proxy for what's going on in this sphere with regards to lithium-ion batteries being the core component of both e-mobility, emission-free mobility, but also renewable energy as the one factor that is stabilizing the grid, that is providing off-grid power and increasingly replacing diesel in every sort of area as well. Batteries are very expensive. That's one of the issues. And I think this is an example that really highlights the importance of talking about batteries when we talk about the transition to e-mobility and renewable energies. A mildly successful vehicle such as the i3 sold in excess of a couple of 100,000 vehicles, but already 100,000 electric vehicles translate into a battery asset value worth more than €1 billion. That's a lot of money, and especially if you consider that you are giving between 8 and 10 years of warranty, 160,000 kilometers. We're now talking even more on these batteries. All of this value is somewhat directly linked to your own balance sheet, and it's an issue for OEMs, but it's especially an issue because batteries are very complex electrochemical systems. We see that in a number of areas, and I'd love to highlight this life cycle approach that we're taking at this topic, and I think this is becoming apparent here on the slide already. We see a very long time to market. You want to make sure that this incredibly complex electrochemical system will be performing its lifetime. You're setting it up for 10 to 15 years that you're expecting such a battery to last. In the amount of time, which is like usual development cycle, which would be like 4 to 6 years, 3 years, ideally, you really want to shorten that. You see like incredibly speeding up development cycles. But batteries are somewhat exempt from that. It's very complex to do that. It's very expensive. And it's associated with a lot of uncertainty with regard to the actual performance. You see new cell chemistries coming out every year. So if the end of your development cycle, your cell chemistry might already be outdated. So you really want to be quick in pushing this technology into the market, really want to understand how this battery is performing throughout its entire lifetime of 10 years, regardless. So a bit of a goal conflict here, a classical issue. And how is this being solved? Well, quite often we see like an oversizing, sometimes called an overstacking of batteries. Kind of refers to not using the entire capacity of a battery. So you are reducing the amount of energy that you can take out of a battery, even though the battery would be, in theory, able to provide you with more. So you only use the 80% of a battery in the center, which is kind of from 10% state of charge to 90% state of charge. This prevents the battery from excessive aging, which is good, but it also means that your per piece prices are higher than they should be. So production costs, obviously, I mean, you're talking, for example, the automotive industry, you're talking about euros per vehicle saved, and it's really important. But then this battery, which costs in excess of tens of thousands of euros, suddenly is there and you're just adding 10, 20, 30% of capacity just to make sure that over the entire lifetime you don't run into trouble, which is kind of leading to the third topic, the warranty risk and service costs associated with batteries. Because if you run in trouble, this is one example from a German manufacturer, if you run in trouble and you need to replace the battery, that actually puts you back 35,000 euros in this example. It's a sports car. And it has other issues as well. And they're not necessarily in the automotive sector, but you see like safety and reliability issues as an issue in other areas such as the stationary storage. For example, in South Korea, quite a lot of these have burned. And really getting the control of this testing, simulating stuff in the pre-use phase, in the development phase, getting the design right, getting the size of the battery right by not only having better simulations, but also being able to take control back of the after sales, of working with the battery while it's already in the field and understanding how it behaves is our value proposition. So I put some numbers here, but let's dive into more details here on what that's actually all about. I mean, our core idea, as I mentioned already, the life cycle approach. We want to start in the development and then move over from testing to production, reselling, and second life. I mean, reselling, I already mentioned the paper that we just published with Altavista and TÜV Rheinland. And we see already the use of the battery, the use of the vehicle, the treatment of the vehicle has an impact for a Golf class electric vehicle with like 3 years of use can already create up to 450 euros in difference. And then if you want to move something, for example, into the second life, not only reselling it, but also into the second life, then it's really important to know how each and every individual module and cell in your battery have performed in order to put together the most optimal pack. So the transparency here is the key. And how are we doing this? Well, 2 areas, obviously, the one being the development phase where simulations are the core topic, and the other one is what we sometimes call the digital twin, where you have the vehicles or the batteries in the field and they're constantly creating data. Using this data is really key. So the battery management system creates some signals. We are using these signals, and the important part is making sense of them. Understanding what they actually tell you about the health of the battery with regard to the fading capacity, with regard to the increasing resistance, with regard to the performance, electrothermal behavior that is available, and then really predicting all of these parameters towards the end of life as well. So understanding how is this battery going to perform in the future until it's finally reaching its end of life, which is usually when you see a rapid decrease in the capacity, basically making the battery unusable. So you cannot really charge them anymore. The products with which we are doing this, on the one hand side, the simulation models which we deploy. If there's no field data available, if you want to simulate different use cases, you want to understand how this is going to perform in different scenarios, how to maybe optimize the design. I mean, these simulation models are directly linked to our cloud software, so you can even update them with data from the field. They become more precise over time. I think one of the key USPs that we have here, we can deliver them very quickly and they're then constantly being updated. The analytics cloud software, on the other hand, it's really about making sense of data that we receive in the field, providing solutions for each and every specific battery in the field. Really taking this battery, not only monitoring it, providing like warranty insurance solutions, but also providing aging transparency down to the cell level. So every single battery cell or every module and then the pack as a whole, obviously, we can tell you what kind of capacity developments you're seeing, kind of the electric thermal behavior, impedance increases, and so on. This enables you, obviously, to do numerous use cases from predictive maintenance, but also ultimately, and I think that's a very important topic, is to optimize the overall life cycle and lifetime. And thinking about this and the ecological and economical impact that batteries have, once you've bought one or you produced a battery, you've already created the largest costs, both ecologically as well as economically. And every minute you're using it, you're reducing the CO2 footprint, or the footprint on the environment, but also reducing the per mile or per kilowatt hour price of your battery. So extending the lifetime really is one of the holy grail of managing a battery, and making it possible to use it in a second life again and really getting the maximum out of your battery. I think one of the key and core value propositions that we're having. Taking a bit of a look here at predictive battery analytics, the differences. I mean, what do we see? Machine learning, a generally really important approach, and it's at the core of Twice as well. But in itself, it really doesn't provide the value that you would want from a predictive battery analytics software, because you need large amounts of data in order to be able to predict something. And then you only kind of predict ones and zeros. You kind of predict, okay, is this a failure or is it not, and why has it failed? This is something that we can really provide with kind of the empirical analytical models, where we see, okay, this is the electrothermal behavior, this is how the battery is supposed to behave, this is how it is behaving, and getting down to both predicting the error, but also getting down to the root cause or the aging cause, and understanding what kind of parameters are happening there. Also, empirical analytical models don't need large amounts of data. They don't need any training, so they provide results from day one. And then adding into the mix, the spice, I think, is having deep battery expert knowledge and really closing the circle here towards what I have been discussing at the beginning on how our company is set up. We have the AI guys, we have the battery experts, and we have the kind of software infrastructure to bring it all together. And I think that the battery knowledge, bringing this in, understanding batteries, really supporting our clients of getting the best batteries out there, is one of the keys in being successful. And looking at how successful we are in the market, you can see the vast array of our applications and our numerous customers that we have here, from power tools being fairly small application of our technologies, where we both started with the simulation models, but are now moving into actually providing recommendations for users of power tools on which battery is better in which applications. So cutting a hedge or versus like using a chainsaw to cut down a tree. It makes a huge difference on the kind of stress that you put on a battery, and that's insights that we can provide. Going to the very big applications. Trucks also supporting the development, but now facing further towards the after-sales market. And then I think kind of moving also automotive OEMs, where we have the after-sales, and then also second life applications, both combined. I think very important. We also have a case here with Munich Re and the ESS integrator Smart Power, who unfortunately cannot be here today. That was originally planned, but the schedule was a bit too short notice. And you can see that kind of any application that has a lithium-ion battery in there is somewhat a client for us, and we have this wide client base, and we're very happy to grow in the future. I, at the same time, would be very happy to discuss this with you guys. There was my contact details at the beginning, and thank you very much for listening. I hope it was somewhat interesting for you. Take care. Bye-bye.